Hello, and welcome again to Headway Idea Labs. My name is Wes Okeke, the CEO of Headway, and today we're going to talk through the 4 steps to build, solving the R&D crisis. My background is in electrical engineering for over 40 years and also software development. And so this process steps that we're going to walk through is coming from years of many failures, but also some successes in developing and launching hardware or software products. So, 2 things just to begin is the intro into development. If you're new to this, trust me, any organization, whether it's small or large, and I worked for some large companies that ran into hardware development situations when they were trying to build new products. And it can be very, very challenging. And this is where you see a ton of time wasted, money lost, or market when it comes to selling markets. You lose market share because you built the wrong type of product. But intro into the development stage, it is very vital that we go through some specific steps, and they're not necessarily a lot of steps, but there's specific steps that you should take good notice of and do your due diligence when you're going through them. So we want to talk a little bit about that so that you don't suffer many, many, many problems further on down the road. So the goal of 4 steps to build is to prevent development failure by using a process that many use when developing a new software or hardware product. So I'm not bringing anything or creating anything new. There are some tips in there that you may have never heard, but this is not anything super new. But these process steps are not widely known. So my hope is that watching this video is going to alert you to some key things to pay attention to. One thing you may not hear about, though, in the development and R&D process is getting feedback from your customers, especially your early adopters. So, early adopters, which if you don't know who your early adopter is, please go to our website. You can get some information on who your early adopter might be. Go on Google, Google the term early adopter, Google the term, the importance of early adopters for any product or service that you may be launching. But knowing your early adopters in the very, very beginning is extremely, extremely important. So, R&D crisis, what do we see? Excessive overrun of development costs, slow time to market, and delays. There are times that we were launching new products and we would tell the customers that the product is coming out in 6 months, and then another 12 months has gone by and the product is just slowly coming out. And so we run into these problems when we don't take the proper steps to developing and doing the research properly. Product failures after launch. You launch a product and it fails um, because it didn't do what you expected to do, or it didn't do what your customer expected it to do. And then the fourth one, which I've seen quite often, is lack of market interest. And this happened to the companies I worked for. And I worked for 2 large companies. They were multi-million dollar companies that were in the hardware and software space. And part of my role, being a hardware engineer, was actually sales. So I actually went and met with tons of customers, um, North and South America, and also overseas, and would present these new launch products and get the feedback. And typically, the feedback was a little bit too late, and so the market interest was not as successful as we had hoped. In fact, it was market failure because we built or implemented 4 features out of the 6 features the customer needed. But there was one particular feature that the customer needed that was a deal breaker. And because we didn't do the proper research in the R&D, we lost sight of it. So even though R&D stands for research and development, it's not only strictly building, it's also researching your customer as well. Here's a famous quote from Mr. Albert here. It says, research is seeing what everybody else has seen and thinking what nobody else has thought. I'll read it one more time. Research is seeing what everybody else has seen and thinking what nobody else has thought. I thought that's a really, really good quote, because it's good to look at the problems that everyone else and the successes everyone else has seen and done and been successful at or failed at, but then also taking that and thinking outside of the box and moving that forward. We did a R&D project, early on R&D project for a large oil and gas company here in Houston. And this went extremely well. And we actually used this process, 4 steps to build. And then part of that, we looked at patents, which I'll mention again later on through this video. But we looked at some patents that provided a lot of information and insight on the success and the failures of the type of technology they were trying to launch. Now, improving product success. These are 4 steps that I look at and that you should consider, and I'll explain the importance of each. Feasibility study. A feasibility study can reduce risk of up to 50% or even more. Now, what is a feasibility study? A feasibility study is when you look and study out the feasibility. Is this particular product, whether it's software or hardware, feasible? And so you're not building anything. You may buy a few things, but the focus here is to do your research and determine, is this feasible on paper? And your second step is, once you know it is potentially feasible, you do a proof of concept, which provides a true workable solution and validates the technology. So what I tell people to do is create the most ugliest version of your product. But what you do is you buy parts off the shelf and make sure that you can develop this at its basic form to prove that the concept will work. So it's proof of concept. But the feasibility study helps you do a lot of that research. And also in the feasibility study, we do a short market research. We want to do a little bit of research on the market to determine who's going to buy it, where are they located, can they afford this? And that just provides a little bit of guide of what we're building. So at the end of the day, we don't build something that no one can afford or no one will want or no one will use, right? So the proof of concept then is the second stage, where you prove the concept as least expensive as possible. In other words, keep your budget very tight, buy whatever you can buy to prove that it will potentially work. And then from the proof of concept, you also, towards the end of that, you decide and you design and plan what the MVP prototype will be. So this is development of a workable unit that potentially you'll want to show to your customers. And then fourthly is your beta customers. This is where you take your MVP and have your customers, which hopefully you've already determined who those customers will be by stage 2, between stage 2 and 3, between your proof of concept and your prototype. And then they're providing feedback. They are similar to your early adopters, not always the same, but they're similar to your early adopters. And so by step 4, when you're doing your beta test and you're doing your patenting your IPs and trials and so on and so forth, this is very important to have beta units for your beta customers to test. So a little bit more in depth in the development process. I mentioned feasibility study. Here are some things that you want to do. The type of technology to consider. So in the feasibility, okay, what technologies are out there? What is the history of this particular technology? If you're ever looking to build something or utilize a certain technology, you want to make sure you do some research on that technology, the history of it, how long has it been out, what does the longevity of that technology look like? Will it disappear? Will it be obsolete shortly after you launch it? What is the life of that technology? If the technology is brand new, has it been qualified? Has it been validated by some long-standing companies that are currently using it. Getting into a new technology too soon can be very detrimental. So you don't want to always take the newest technology and launch it. And you don't always want to take the oldest technology and launch that too. So you really have to do some research forward and backwards. The complexity of the product development, how complex is this going to take? You want to do a study on that. You want to research that. You don't want to start building anything yet. And if you're a tech person like me, you're going to want to start building right away, but don't do that, please. Thirdly, a rough cost of a proof of concept. What would the cost of a proof of concept be? So you want to get a rough cost to build the proof of concept. Calculate time frame to build it. How much time will it take to build the proof of concept? And then all the necessary resources to achieve this proof of concept. And also, what other resources will you need to achieve the prototype or the MVP after you're done the proof of concept? It's kind of good to do a little bit of research for not only the proof of concept, but also the prototype. Feasibility research in regards to software. Research your APIs needed. Some APIs may not be very well supported. Some companies that have launched APIs may be going out of business. They may have not done well, and you launch your new software, or mobile app, or web platform using an API, and that company that developed that API no longer supports it or goes out of business, and you literally have to scramble to figure things out again. So research the APIs, the companies behind the APIs, the success of those companies that have provided those APIs. Research the complexity of the software development. Are you going to need specialized developers to build what you need to build? And then again, similar to the feasibility study for the hardware side, calculate cost to build the final product. And always, always for both hardware and software, there's always an MVP you need to have in mind. And MVP stands for minimal viable product, which we'll get there at the end. And I want you to think about that for a minute, but minimal viable product. So it's a product that has value, but it's a minimal product. And I'll explain that a little bit more. Then you come to the proof of concept. For hardware, it's a workable solution to validate the technology, that the technology is feasible. It provides some insight on what technology path would be best. And then it also, for a proof of concept, provides a list of necessary components to build your full prototype or MVP/beta. And that's very, very helpful. The wireframe, if you're building a software, developing the wireframe with the customer's input and direction. This will provide a working demo. In some cases, it may be a working demo. In some cases, it may be almost like a wireframe that touches buttons and it's almost like a PowerPoint slide. But either or, this wireframe, which I prefer, is putting together wireframe, will provide a working demo in 1 to 3 months, and it allows the customer to interact. So it actually helps you develop the blueprint for your final product. And I've done this multiple times where a wireframe was done. There was a lot of communication and interaction with the customer. And then the developer took the wireframe after all the discussions had been made and voila, produced a perfect product at the end. If you're going to hire a developer, have them do a wireframe first. Never, ever have them build the product. It will cause a ton of extra work, time, and loss of money. Fully guaranteed. And again, as I've mentioned earlier, get your early adopters involved. And if you have potential beta customers, get them involved as well. And then we come to the prototype MVP. So the MVP, again, is a minimal viable product. And think about this very, very carefully. Value, 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 value. Understanding the pain that your customer is experiencing, whether you're developing a hardware product or a software product, understanding intimately the pain and how that pain is affecting your customer is the most critical component and thing to know when developing any kind of technology. I say this to people all the time. Technology is only the vehicle. It's only the vehicle of the value you're bringing to your end user or your customer. And a lot of times when we're building a new product, we get so infatuated with the product, and we lose sight of the people from whom we've developed this product for. So this MVP, remember, if it has an incredible amount of value and it looks ugly or works 80% of the time, it will still be very much accepted by that customer. Not because of all the features it has, not because how nice it looks, not because how fast it goes, but because it solves that customer's pain point. So minimal viable problem. You can have one feature on this MVP, but that feature solves a huge problem for that customer that the customer can't wait to get their hands on it. And I've had customers that have paid me well over $100,000 to finish a product because it was going to solve a huge pain for them. So they would, and they weren't getting any equity into the business or the product. I would provide some discounts with that for them, but they would put a lot of money into the product development, the final product development, into the MVP so that they could get a product because it solved a pain. And again, the prototype MVP is typically a full working unit, almost a full working unit. The manufacturing process at this time is also determined, and determine any certifications cost for certifications and testing, right? So depending if you're in Europe, you're going to need CE markings, certifications in Europe, and in the US, UL, and a few others, depending on what type of hardware you're building. Software, obviously, those types of certifications aren't as necessary unless you're in the medical field. Then you're looking at HIPAA compliancy, which both Microsoft has servers that handle that, and so does Amazon AWS. So again, feasibility study for hardware, feasibility research for software, proof of concept for hardware when you want to prove that the concept will work, and then wireframe optional beta, which is for software, and then your prototype MVP, both whether software or hardware are working versions. And again, you are focused on the value, the pain point that this MVP solves, to make sure it does that job excellently. Now, boost your innovation, increase your competitive advantage. And these are what I call disruptive technologies. And they come in, they can become very important in leveraging not only your effectiveness, but then also very appealing to investors. And they are also appealing to customers, and at times they can help you have a leading edge against competitors. But I don't want you thinking about this at this stage. I prefer you, after you've done your feasibility study and some of your market research, and you can do this, you can look at this before you do your MVP, but you don't want to get sucked into, I have to fully depend on one of these technologies to have full value. And again, I've been in sales for software and hardware for over 25 years, and still at the core of who I am as an engineer. And I understand the passion behind technology, but I also understand people very, very well. And so you want to make sure you have value, understand the value you're bringing in, to your customer. And then before you do your MVP, though, I do want you to look at one of these disruptive technologies or multiple of these disruptive technologies to see if they can be leveraged in order to provide value, a competitive edge, and an attraction to an investor. Computer vision, obviously, computer vision is what simply said gives computers eyes to see. And that could be anything from automation to inspection to you name it. Blockchain in the sense of security. productization. So this is data productization, and that is a very interesting um, uh, knowledge or disruptive technology. It's more of a disruptive technology slash business model that you should consider, and we can talk more about that. Um, GPS tracking, IoT, extended reality, AR, VR, LiDAR, and then AI. AI is becoming very, very popular, and obviously AI stems from data. So these disruptive technologies, don't just throw them in, but consider how you would leverage them to address a customer need, which is very, very important first. Secondary, how you can have a competitive advantage by using disruptive technology. And then thirdly, the value and the attractiveness to investors. Achieving funding criteria. So we have partnered with several funding groups, and utilizing disruptive technologies helps with that. But then also a few other things that we want to um, let you know is that Headway, some of the things we do so that companies, especially tech companies, can be funded is we like to help educate, prepare, build, and provide. Right. So we are always on, and this is our one of our life's missions as a company is to educate entrepreneurs and innovators on how best to launch and grow their business, um, prepare them for their initial funding, and then help them build their product in some cases. But we are continuously building our angel and VC network of investors that approve of Headway's standard of product and company development. So we take a lot of time to spend in developing our own processes and gaining knowledge and understanding so that we can advise companies on how to better build technology. And then we also provide creative methods and tools for our startups to develop self-funding techniques. Second part to this, and I will leave this up. And if you ever need this matrix, please feel free to reach out. But we have put this together in the collaboration of investors on what they are looking for, and um, we also have this on our website. If you're ever interested in taking the test, it's investor readiness assessment test or qualifier on our website, and it'll walk you through, and you just answer the questions, and it'll give you a score if need be. But this matrix has been set up by investors to help startups determine the um, potentiality of being attractive to a investor or VCs. So beta customers, market global versus local, ease of entry. So when it comes to your beta customers, as I mentioned earlier, there are a few things that we like to look at, and I would suggest. Number one, your market. And so you, in the feasibility study, you do a early market research. But when it comes to the market, you always want to look globally versus locally. So nationally, locally can stand for being national, could be stand for being within a particular state or city. But I will use the term local as national for the country you're in, and then global outside of your country. Why? There may be another part of the world where your product is far more valuable, and people are willing to even pay more money because the pain they're experiencing far outweighs the pain your local potential customers are experiencing. And then second, so that's one thing to look at regarding the market. And the second thing to look at is the ease of entry, right? Especially when it comes to medical products, the ease of entry can be a little bit more difficult in the US than it is in another country. But don't get me wrong, there are other countries where they have the entry process similar to the FDA into the medical is more difficult. But if it's a standard software, hardware product, Your ease of entry could be a lot easy, could be less competition, could be greater demand. So always look at the market from a global and a national uh, scale, and then the ease of entry for either global or local. And then partners, not customers. This is understanding their pain early on is key. But treating your customers as partners and not as customers. Uh, for the 20 something years I was in sales, I treated my customers as partners. So they never felt I was selling to them. They always felt that I was helping them solve one of their problems. So, very important to have that mindset. Knowing also how much they're willing to pay. Learn to get that information up very early on in your discussions. Don't wait till you launch to find out how much are they really willing to pay. That can be very dangerous, and I've seen countless startups wait till they have launched to determine how much they're willing to sell it. And then also providing incentives and support. Your customers, you should always feel that you're providing good incentives to buy from them, and then support, customer support, customer support, customer support. Extremely important. And then certifications that I mentioned earlier, global versus local certifications, predicates, if it's medical, FDA attorney, if need be, find one early on to help you navigate this process. So that pretty much covers the 4 steps to build. I hope this helps. Again, this program is free. We have some templates. We also have other investor readiness programs that are not free, though. And we have the market research if you need help with that, creating a stronger value proposition, developing your business strategies, sales planning basics, developing a cohesive team, which is one of the key things, if not the key thing, that investors look at. The early adopter, getting an early adopter report. That is not a program as much as it is a service that we provide, because it requires an in-depth research based on a few things that your company will provide, but then also the market, the industry, the people. And then obviously we also have a full startup package as well. And this is just briefly if customers are looking to come to Headway to partner with us if you need help on the engineering side. We also have templates within our investor readiness programs. These are just some samples of some of the templates. So we've provided a lot of PDFs that you can write into and type into for some of the worksheets that we have to help you through this process. And then we also have our funding platform that we partnered with a group called Funder. And this is available to startups. It's roughly about $29 a month to be on the platform. There is a entry cost, though, that requires you to meet with one of our investor consultants or funding consultants, which is either myself or someone else, to ensure that your investor deck, your team, all the documents are pretty accurate before you get onto the platform. And thank you very much for listening and walking with me through 4 steps to build. I hope these points were helpful. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us through one of our social media links. Thank you, and have a great day and good luck.